I'm gonna get us started here, folks. Thank you all so much for joining us, and welcome back to our first gardening subcommittee meeting of 2024. I know we're a small group right now. Hopefully more folks will join as the meeting progresses, but I do, because we are shifting to an hour this year, I do want to get us started. And since I am recording, I feel okay in getting us started because I'll make sure the recording goes out with the follow-up notes as well. I did want to drop into the chat for everyone who is here to share with their networks as someone joins. I wanted to drop in this job opportunity or host of job opportunities. Actually, I believe it's 4 different job opportunities from Love and Carrots here in DC. Here, folks, come from Love and Carrots here in DC on a variety of different gardening related and urban agricultural related jobs. The job listings will be going into our newsletters over the next few weeks. And you are more than welcome to share them with anyone in your network or anyone that you know that may be interested in those positions. Hello to those who have just joined. I am dropping our agenda in the chat, and then I am going to transition us over. I'm just checking to see if I had any more announcements. I don't believe so. Nothing important, anything that I see that I missed, I'll send in the follow-up notes with the recording. But I do want to take this opportunity to welcome and turn the floor over to Naya, who is the new executive director as of today for the Montgomery County Food Council. And actually my first chance to talk to her today as well. So I want to say welcome and thank you for joining us, and just give her the opportunity to say hello to this group.
Sure. Thank you so much, Jack. And yes, I did miss you at the meet and greet. I think, yeah, it was this year, earlier.
Yeah, I was homesick.
So yeah, so it's nice to, see your face, and welcome all to the meeting. I'm coming to you from National 4-H Council, where I was the director for Well-Connected Communities, a national health initiative that was funded by Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. And I led about 23 land grant universities who were working in about 53 communities across the nation to implement policy systems and environmental changes to impact food insecurity in their communities. My background is in public health, and from the University of Michigan, go Blue. And I have also worked in nonprofits and with state government and academia as well. So it's a blessing, to be multifaceted that way, in that I'm able to roll with different crowds. And I think that's a good thing. And so surely what I bring to this role is also being able to work with various stakeholders. And I'm really looking forward to meeting all our different partners in different areas. And this is definitely one of them. And I'm looking forward to learning more and getting to know you all better. But I'm here. There's a lot of meetings. I'm still getting to learn people's names and, getting to know all the works. But I am really thrilled to be a part of MCFC. And I'm looking forward to all the wonderful things that we're going to do together and all the things we're going to achieve together to create a sustainable food system for Montgomery County. I live in Northern Virginia in Springfield with my husband and 2 children whom I was telling Massa earlier. One is 6 and one is 1. So I have not slept well since 2017. That was the last time I recall sleeping well. So, but we power through, right? Onward. Nice to meet you all.
Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Naya, and welcome again. As a staff member, obviously so excited for this opportunity to get to know you better and work with you more, and for you to be able to also see some of the work that we do, and as you're learning. And obviously, if you have any questions in the meantime about this group, you're more than welcome to ask me.
Thank you,
Pam. Yeah, of course. Pam, I just wanted to check before we turned it over our presenters to see if you had any announcements or wanted to introduce yourself again or anything like that, or if you're good to. I know you're presenting in this presentation anyway, so you can hold it till then.
Yeah,
I just wanted to see if you had anything. All right, cool.
Thanks, Jack. Nope.
Yeah, of course. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Barbara and Kat for their presentation. You both, like I said earlier, both should have screen sharing ability. I also have the presentation, so let me know if there's any issues. I can share my screen if needed.
Okay, I'll try sharing my screen here.
Yep, all good. And if it doesn't work, just let me know.
See if that works. Oh, I'm getting all sorts of different messages about privacy.
Here, why don't I do it then? It is easy enough for me.
Yeah, why don't you put it up there?
Yep, happy to. Just make sure I share not my monitor. Oh, there we go. And you can just tell me
Next
when,
slide.
oh, yep. Whenever you're ready, just tell me when to go to the next slide. Can everyone see that?
Do you want to put it in slide presentation view, or is that?
I see. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna have to stop my share. Sorry about that. Share my second screen. Did that work?
Yes. Perfect.
Go for it.
So my name is Barbara Spalholz, and I am one of the project managers, along with Kat Kahn, who I think is well known to the group, who's project manager on this Giving Garden, HarvestShare Giving Garden. And today we're pleased to be able to give a progress report on our first year of operation of the Giving Garden. So next slide. I want to thank you for the opportunity to present to this group. As you know, HarvestShare was founded by Kat Kahn early in the pandemic. She remains the executive director, and it's an all-volunteer 501c3 organization that believes that as a community of gardeners, we can make a valuable contribution to reducing food insecurity in our county, bringing fresh, nutritious food to those in need, as well as teaching people to grow food for themselves. And HarvestShare is committed to reducing food insecurity through fresh produce donations and food gardening education. And I think many of you are aware of the different opportunities that HarvestShare has given the county in terms of educating gardeners, providing seeds and seedlings to the different gardeners and community gardens, and then having a network of people who will then collect excess food from these gardens and get that food to community food banks. So in that way, HarvestShare has been instrumental in helping to get fresh produce to people in need and educating the community as well. So the Giving Garden was Kat's idea that in addition to these other organizations or activities, to actually have a garden that HarvestShare ran where all of the food would be then produced and sent to food banks, as opposed to just excess food from the community gardens or backyard gardens. So that's what the Giving Garden is. And before I get too far along, next slide, please. I want to really stress that this has become a collaborative project in growing to donate. And I wanted to highlight the work, the different partners involved, so that I don't forget to do that by the end of the presentation. So first and foremost, the workforce partners. We have HarvestShare staff, as well as volunteers that came in through HarvestShare organization. We also have a collaboration with Potomac Presbyterian Church members. We also have a number of Montgomery County Master Gardeners involved, and some coordination with their activities. Then we have funding partners. We have the gifts and donations that have come into HarvestShare itself. And key to this, which you'll see in a moment when you see the site, the landowners who provided the site where we have this garden, Bobby Soror and Jean Grillo. And then recently in July, we received a grant from the Montgomery County Office of Food Systems Resilience, and that's has been a big help and will continue to be a big help going forward. And then our recipient food pantry partners are primarily nourishing Bethesda, has gotten the bulk of our donations, but also some have gone to St. Martin's Catholic Church Food Pantry. So if I can move on now to the next slide. So this is where we began in February of 2023. And there's wonderful opportunities at this site, although you won't necessarily see it from this particular photograph. But you can see we have raised beds. We have 14 100 square foot raised beds. It's enclosed by a fence. We have access to a shed and easy parking on site. This is all on the property of Bobby Sroor and Jean Grillo. They built this community style garden. And Kat was able to get 2 beds actually in 2022 to test out this site, and I helped her with that. And we saw that the site had many, many opportunities and advantages. And so we were hoping at the end of 2022 that we would be able to get a couple of beds, maybe 4 or 5, which we thought the 2 of us could handle quite well, and work up to getting more and more food directly from this garden out to the food banks. To our surprise and trepidation to a certain extent, in February of 2023, Bobby and Jean came to us and asked HarvestShare to manage the entire garden, which was all 14 beds. And as you can see, they were loaded with weeds. The previous management had a bit of a laissez-faire approach, which doesn't work in a garden, quite frankly. So when Kat and I accepted this challenge, it was with, as I said, a bit of trepidation, because it was just the 2 of us, and these weeds were thick and deep. So if you want to click quickly through the next 2 slides, or 2 clicks, you'll see Kat and I digging and removing weeds, which we did through February and March. However, if you go to the next slide, what we really wanted to do, and click again, what we really wanted to do was adapt some high production gardening techniques. And what you can see, this is after we've actually done a lot of work and started to lay things out. We were using the square foot gardening approach that really looks at not, if you read back of a seed packet, it will say plant seeds 4 inches apart in rows 18 inches wide. Well, when you're looking at raised beds and you don't have to worry about getting farm equipment through rows, the 18 inches for rows apart really doesn't make sense. And these approaches really now use every inch of the garden space available in a raised bed garden, so you can get much higher density planting. So we wanted to use those kinds of approaches. And if you click again, along with getting this high level of production out of a garden, we wanted to make sure that the soil was really going to be able to support that growth. So we did soil sampling and testing to make sure we knew what the soil needed to be able to support this. It turns out we did need to do a lot of augmentation with compost, as well as with some organic fertilizer, but we had good news. There was no lead in the soil, which is good to know for food production. But we were going ahead with that, and click to the next. And maybe the next couple of clicks, and I'll go through them more quickly. We're going to use that. Stop there. Make sure we had things well mulched to reduce the weeds. We were using organic fertilizers. We were using integrated pest management approaches, which would basically eliminates the need for any heavy pesticide use, because you're using the right varieties for the soil and location you have that would be growing optimum. You've again maximized the soil composition. All of these things reduce the need for any kind of pesticides, and we use all the approaches that hand pick off bugs as opposed to again using any kind of pesticides. We're not going to be certified organic because that's a whole nother level of certifications, but we are basically trying to implement those kinds of approaches to the gardening. We're going to cover plants, and we're also going to we wanted to try using the vertical space above the garden. Again, if you can grow up using plant supports, we can maximize what we can get out of each garden bed. So we're using quite a few of these different techniques, but as you can imagine, they're fairly labor intensive. So next slide, please. So we started to recruit more people. First, we got my husband involved, and he's out there rototilling. And then Kat was able to use her network, and we got some additional people who were helping us with the garden on a regular basis. But then importantly, next click. Importantly, Jean Grillo, one of the landowners, was connected with Potomac Presbyterian Church, and they had a real interest in getting involved in community activities that both were supporting the environment as well as helping to address food insecurity. So they have been a wonderful partner in promoting our program to their church community, helping us get some volunteers, helping us with scheduling those volunteers and communicating with those volunteers. So together now we have, between the different organizations, we have probably 10 to 12 people who come regularly and are fairly well trained. And that has been a real important part of us being able to move forward on this project. Next slide. So as I mentioned, when we first started, it was just Kat and me. And so we decided to be a little bit more conservative in our plans. We also, a good gardener, we're getting ready now to plant for late February and March. Whereas last year, we only realized we had the site in February, and we really didn't have things ready to plant until April and May. So we instead, focused on 5 beds we thought we could do with those high density approaches that I mentioned in an earlier slide, where there's quite a bit of labor involved. And those were the tomatoes, the peppers, the cucumbers, etc. And we decided that the remaining beds we would use with what we thought would be lower maintenance. I'm not so sure that was true, but crops that would at least sprawl and take care of themselves for a while. The winter squash, potatoes, strawberries, cantaloupe. We weren't doing the vertical approaches there. We were just letting them grow. And we also did a test bed to try out things we hadn't ever tried before. But then as the mid-season approached and our workforce grew, and we kept having donated plants arrive, and we realized we could do a little bit more. So we found more places to plant. We planted the ochre among the cantaloupe because ochre grows tall, and of course the cantaloupe is sprawling along the ground. So those types of pairings worked pretty well. We also looked for every spare inch we could put another plant, and including some shady areas that we initially avoided, but turned out to be quite good at supporting the plants we wanted. And we started to do some succession planting. So when the broccoli was done, which was fairly early, we had zucchini, a second crop of zucchini plants ready to go. And when the green beans started to fade out, we put in new crops. And then in September, we actually started to put in a whole new set of cool crops that we could continue: radishes, greens, turnips, etc. So if we go on to the next slide. So this is now what the garden looked like in August. And if you think back from that picture you saw of what it looked like in February, we're pretty proud of this. And what you can see up front is we've got a variety of different hot peppers growing. So you can see the little green chilies. And behind that in the next bed, we had herbs and pollinators. We found that incorporating various flowers to attract the bees would be helpful to a high production approach. And then behind that, you might be able to see some eggplants and then some large tomatoes. And you can see everything was growing extremely well. And if you look on the right side, that pan on the right side, those were our later zucchinis that we put in after the broccoli was done. And further down, we had leeks growing. And then again, we were sneaking in tomatoes all around it wherever we could. So we actually started harvesting in July, but you can tell by August we were really going full tilt. Next slide. So one thing, particularly given that we were asking for grant support and that this is the first year that we were doing this on this scale, we've been really tracking all of the resources going into the garden as well as the outputs from the garden. And so I just wanted to give you some idea of what went in and what we got out of the garden. So first of all, we had more than 300 donated seedlings as well as many, many seeds. And you can see on the side, the photograph of some of the seedlings coming in from all of our different growers. Many of these were master gardeners, but also some of the community garden growers and other growers that Kat had connections with through HarvestShare. And as I said, more than 300 people, or more than 300 seedlings were donated. And if, for those of you who are actually gardeners and may have gone out to various garden stores to purchase seedlings at $5 a pop, you realize that this was a huge donation from the community, and one we expect will go on each year because this garden, this community of growers is really rather committed to these kinds of projects. We also put in 50 pounds of organic fertilizer, 15 cubic yards of compost, as well as 5 cubic yards of mulch. We had many plant supports, some that were donated and some that we have purchased in help with the grants, as well as row covers. And then something that I wasn't thinking about, but Kat made me very aware of, was as we donate these foods, we have to have supplies to actually, put these in bags and get these weighed and move these around. So we had those kinds of supplies. And then the other thing we tracked was the volunteer labor. And this first year did take more than 500 hours of volunteer labor, which is really just a huge, amount of effort that the community has given to this project. We're hoping in future years it won't be quite so much. A large portion of that was weeding, and each year the weeds should get less. Next slide. So what were our garden outputs? And I've tried to put some pictures around the edge of the slide to give you an idea of the beautiful produce we were able to grow. But we did harvest more than 1,400 pounds, and that was really from July to December or January. We actually had our last one in January. 1,400 pounds that were donated. And I've got the different amounts of some of the big leaders, tomatoes, the greens, the peppers, and the herbs. I really want to highlight the herbs because we all know what herbs cost in the grocery store and how fragile they are. So 30 pounds of herbs is a lot of herbs and at a very high value and often, well, they were very appreciated by the recipients at the food bank. Another huge giving garden output was the dedicated and trained volunteer team. We could not have done this without these volunteers. And they all many of them started with none to very little gardening, certainly vegetable gardening expertise. And they really learned a lot, and can now, in going forward, can be a great resource to any new volunteers that we hope to get. As I said, the partnership with Potomac Presbyterian was very valuable. And we were able to get some recognition on Fox News in a Pay It Forward segment they had, where they actually filmed in the garden and showed their viewership what we were able to accomplish. Can I have the next slide, please? So, you know, it wasn't all a bed of roses. We did have some problems with squash pests, particularly bugs, beetles, vine borers. We got all three of them. We did have a woodchuck. Took us a while to figure out it was a woodchuck, but he did start to leave things on the top of the fence post that which could only have been done through a woodchuck. And we did see him, so we'll have to figure out how to keep him out of there. Fortunately, we never got, and I should knock on wood, we never got deer in the garden. We did, if you were gardening, you were aware that we had several periods of drought this growing season, and that had a really impact on celery and cantaloupe, which both desperately need even and frequent watering. And then, as you could see, we did have weed competition, and for those people who are, again, familiar with gardening, the soil holds a lot of weed seeds for a long time. So they kept coming up all season, and we had to keep weeding to keep down the competition, because they will compete with the produce for nutrients and space. So we had to keep that down. And I will mention this because maybe this group can help with this, is the logistics of getting produce to the food banks. Particularly located in Potomac, Maryland, there aren't a lot of food banks close by. Nourishing Bethesda did work out well for us, and they we could drop off on Thursdays and Fridays, and St. Martin's we could drop off on Sundays. But we didn't have a lot of nearby opportunities. We didn't have any other nearby opportunities for the weekend, when a lot of our volunteers would have liked to have volunteered, but we don't have storage space for the perishables. So we can't hold food till we can get it to a food bank that may be open on Tuesday or Wednesday if we've harvested on Saturday. So that's a logistic issue we're still dealing with. Next slide. So the successes, teaching volunteers, the high production approaches that I mentioned, and hit it again, and sustainability. We also were able to grow into the cool season. If you notice around that little cold frame, that's actually snow. And this picture was taken in December or January. I guess it was January after the snowfall. And you can see that we can grow well into the winter in some of these covers and cold frames. So we're hoping to expand that, but we need to have volunteers who are willing to help us going into the winter months. So let's go. Oh, I do want to talk a little bit about the sustainability. The Potomac Presbyterian was a little bit concerned about, you know, how sustainable is this effort if it requires this much volunteer effort. But as the soil improves each season, it will require less weeding, less improvements, and maybe a no-till approach, which again will require less labor. IPM and organic approaches cost less than using synthetic supplements. And once we get an educated workforce, again, that will be very, very helpful. And of course, equipment has a long lifespan. So if I move on to the next slide, and I realize I'm getting very near the end. So just to show you what the garden looked like in December, where we've used a variety of techniques to protect the soil going into the winter. And you can also see our row covers where we're growing crops that go into the winter. And we did do a pretty big harvest under those crops, under those covers. But we've, and if you hit it one more time, just to remind you, oh, that's going more slowly. This is what it looked like a year prior, and hit it again. And so you can see we've made a really massive improvement in the state of the garden going into the growing season. So we should be in good position to go forward for the 2024 season. And just a couple of lessons learned. Those beautiful row covers, some of those did withstand. The ones on the bottom made out of PVC withstood the snowfall. The ones made out of PEX did not. So we learned some things there. We also learned some things about, which are not shown in the pictures, but in terms of putting in supports, which we now have with the help of the grant. We will be able to put those in a time of planting, just to facilitate harvest. And we're going to install some soaker hoses as well to help with drought conditions. So we have a couple of things that we're going to do a little differently that we've learned from the first year experience that I think will make it extremely successful next year. And so our plans, we really do want to continue to expand the volunteer base. We have great volunteers, but we do know some people have moved away. Plans change, people's lives change. So we want to continue to expand the volunteer base. This year, we're going to be able to start planting earlier. And as I mentioned, we're going to continue to improve the soil. We're also going to put in a much higher raised bed so that we could demonstrate how gardens can be made for perhaps those with disabilities. Or who are just older and can't bend as much as some of us are experiencing as we speak. And continuing with the vertical approaches. With the grant, we were able to buy squash tunnels, so we're actually going to try to grow our squash, our winter squash up and over tunnels. And we're going to add another pollinator garden outside the fenced-in space, and continue to increase our educational outreach. So with that, I thank you very much for your attention and interest, and I'll be happy to take questions.
Going to stop the screen share so we can all see each other. Thank you so much, Barbara. That was an awesome presentation. I know personally I have a few questions, I think one for you and one kind of more towards Kat, but I am going to open the floor up for anyone else to see if anyone has questions first. Go for it, Alan.
Yeah, Barb and Kat, are you composting your plant debris? How are you dealing with things like dead tomato plants and weeds and etc.? Are you just setting them aside, or what's going on?
So initially, I mean, we had so much in terms of weeds. There is space on the property that we can compost that. If it's really rough debris, there's a place that is a little bit more wild that we can put it on the property. But the homeowners also do have a compost pile that they, I think, manage a little bit more actively, where we put some of the spent vegetation that we've grown as opposed to the weeds. And then Kat just was able to free source a little tumbler. So we just put that in at the end of the season. We're going to start using that. You know, to actively do composting requires yet another layer of labor, which we're a little short of right now. So we're a little hesitant to depend on that, but that would be a long range plan for the future. But right now, I think we're still going to be dependent on other sources of compost for the garden.
Thank you.
And a lot of the weeds, we actually, I mean, if you remember that picture Barbara showed you, you'd think, oh, if that's weeds in the summer, that was one thing. That was probably taken in March. And the weeds that, or these really incredibly resilient weeds called dock that have, you know, this like 18, 20-inch taproot. We're out there with pitchforks weeding. We're not weeding with hand tools. It was some incredible work. And we tried to solarize, you know, a lot of that, but most of that we just black bagged and took home.
Are there any other questions?
I just wanted to ask, Barbara, have you seen the ADA raised beds that are now available for people who have like mobility disabilities?
I mean, I've seen them in various catalogs and stuff. I will caution what we're able to do in our garden, because while we can raise the beds with some, we have some approaches to raise the beds, the pads between our beds are only 18 inches wide, so we wouldn't be able to get a wheelchair or a walker through there. So while we want to demonstrate what might be possible, and perhaps raise some of these beds up higher than the 8 inches I think they are now, for some of our volunteers who would like not to have to bend down so much. I don't think we can make this, at least not in the short term, an ADA accessible garden. Kat, would you like to comment further on that, or?
No, I think
You
it's
think-
like we got wood in there and the beds were already established, but I know one of our greatest volunteers last year actually had been a professor at Montgomery College in Rockville, and they were working on, had plans to have a school garden, donating to the, donating back to the students. And we're really trying to make it ADA compliant. So it was it's a good talking point. You come to the garden to say, well, it's one thing to raise the beds, but you really have to have the clearance for, I mean, we would not do this ourselves from the ground up because we can't even get a wheelbarrow back there. So it's a lot more, labor intensive if, say, we're putting wood chips on a path that we can't even get a cart, down there. Some of the beds are like 20, maybe 22, or the paths are. But it still gives people an idea what what you can do.
I was just asking because I just saw these. They look like a garden, like a cattle trough almost, but you bring them into, they're like a big structure, like a cattle trough, like 100-gallon trough. And it has a cut out part so that you can wheel up a wheelchair, or you can use crutches, or
Like a keyhole design, is it?
not really. I was surprised when I saw it. I just was talking to someone else who's in progress with a new garden this week, and they sent me their pictures and they said, oh, these are the new ADA beds. And I was like, wow. Well, they're containers, I should say. And I was so excited to see that, because I work with one school that's one of the mobility disability magnets for Montgomery County Public Schools. And so I have used the 70-gallon cattle trough because it has an angled side so that kids with crutches can walk up and they can get fairly close to the container. And it's also raised up high so that they can access the plants. So, and it's been really great. And I tried it at a couple schools, and now several of my schools use them. But these are something kind of like a 2.0 of the cattle trough idea. So I can send you the pictures of them because I thought they were really cool. And the other thing is you could, if you had people who were interested in gardening but had mobility issues, you could maybe put them in a spot. I can't tell from your garden, but whether you have a spot near the entrance or someplace they could have access to, and set them there so that people who did want a garden but were using a wheelchair or crutches could have access to it.
I have to check it out. So
yeah, I'll send you that information.
Great.
Thank you.
Emery?
Hi, yeah, not a question, two comments really quick. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the Food Security Programs Manager at the Montgomery County Food Council. So first, I just wanted to congratulate you on a really great program, because I know we talk a lot about gardens on faith-based organization property to benefit food assistance providers, but we haven't discussed a lot, just someone on a homeowner's property. I know we had a great example that Cheer does in the community, but that's for those specific residents who are actually doing the farming, but, not a donating to a food assistance organization. So I just wanted to highlight that as kind of like a new thing in our space. And also you had mentioned the challenge of cold storage. And I did just want to note that Catherine Nardi from the Office of Food Systems Resilience is on this call. And I just wanted to share her to have a second to share a little quick about a grant opportunity that was going to be coming up in the near future around cold storage to benefit food assistance, food security and food assistance efforts. So I just wanted to make sure we brought that to your attention. Catherine.
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name is Catherine Nardi. Thanks for teeing me up, Anne-Marie. I am a program manager in the county's Office of Food Systems Resilience. We have a variety of grant programs out currently that you all may have seen. Our school-based food assistance program just closed. The Food as Medicine grant program is open until February 12th, and then a SNAP outreach grant program is open through February 25th or 26th. But we are working with Manna Food Center to put out a cold storage grant that would be open to farmers, food producers, or food assistance provider organizations that are, and the language is still being worked out, but that are involved in local food production, food assistance efforts, and/or food recovery efforts. So the eligibility criteria will be spelled out pretty clearly once the grant is live, but that could be potentially an opportunity to apply for cold storage. We're doing some cold storage mapping right now to get a better sense of where there is currently cold storage space in the county, because we know that this is a barrier and a challenge for a lot of the organizations involved in any of those three activities: food production, food assistance, or food recovery. And I'll also note that the resident and community gardening grant program that was run through our office for the FY23 year will be launching the FY24 grant program for that, hopefully by mid-April. So just noting that there are some potential opportunities for support coming down the pipeline. I'll put my email in the chat box if you have any specific questions and want to chat further. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Catherine. And as those come in, I will make sure they're shared out to the gardening subcommittee, to the Google group, and through all those means that we have for communication. So those opportunities come. And if it lines up, obviously, because we meet every other month, but if Catherine's available, we could have her come and join to talk more about those opportunities as well down the line as they're kind of fleshed out and whatnot. Thank you, Catherine. I saw Massa had put a question into the chat, Kat or Barbara. I don't know if you had seen it. She just asked if you have done work in terms of the storage with community food rescue.
Yeah, it's hard with the community garden. So, back when we first started this in May of 2020, when I approached the Food Council, like, is anybody doing this? Really making an effort to get the food from the community gardens and things. We did try for a while, but the problem is that it's so time sensitive. This is not like picking up, a pallet of canned beans or something. If you're harvesting, like greens, we try to pair our harvesting times with the distribution time of whatever food provider is going to get that. And our goal is actually to have it there and back out within 24 hours. You can't stay in a community garden where, say, you did cool season and you've picked a lot of greens and things, and then wait for somebody to pick up what looks like, you're like, 15 pounds of greens, which is actually a lot of greens. Where is it sitting? Is it sitting out at the community garden? So there were just so many logistical issues. And then, honestly, somebody approached me a couple of months ago and said, there's this new app out. Many people in the country are using, matching, you could drop off here and there. And the one thing that this organization has really done is it's community building too. And that's so important to me personally, that it's a neighbor helping neighbor. We're growing this to share it with you. Taking that piece out, if you look all around our country, we're finding ways to stop the communication or hands-on or in person. And like you'll really find that when people get out to that garden, and I'm sure it's the same thing with the community gardens, with the parks gardens. I know Alan Perper is he's the liaison out at Briggs Cheney, very large group. These people are on a mission to do good, to feel something, to have somebody else pick it up. I think you lose some of that connection. And just I'll squeeze this in here. Last year, little group, all volunteer, we donated 24,000 pounds of fresh produce. And we're not talking about, we don't grow for the weight. If you're talking about herbs and greens, about 30% of that, I will say, is, I would say rescued food, but maybe not grown, like, grow more commercially, but still, freshly harvested and donated. That's okay. We feel like we're still doing good our way and keeping those connections. But I think we've continued to grow because people love that that feeling, that personal investment in your community.
Thank you. I want to say thank you both again for just a wonderful presentation and joining us. And Kat, I know you've been a part of this community for a while, but coming to share some of your work as well. And instead, I just have a really quick question, and that is, if you are looking for more volunteers, or if we know volunteers, where should we send them?
Well, we'll just give you the email. You're welcome to
works.
look around the website. It talks about all our different activities, and or just shoot me an email and I'll put both of those in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kat. And thank you so much, Barbara, for joining us this time and sharing about the project. And thank you both for your work. In our last couple of minutes here, I want to give the chance to our returning co-chair, Pam, and a chance to just introduce herself again to the group, to say hello. Just, new year, say hello again, and then introduce our new co-chair for 2024 after that as well. So Pam, go for it.
Hi, everybody. Those of you who know me know that I work for the University of Maryland Extension SNAP Ed program as a nutrition educator. And SNAP Ed supports, obviously, nutrition education in our public schools and community. And we also support school gardens. So I will be presenting in the future about how our gardening for nutrition works. And also, I am a very proud Master Gardener since 2008, and have been working with the Master Gardeners on multiple programs and in many of the gardens. And I just want to give a shout out to our demonstration garden field trip program that we have with the Garden Educators group of Master Gardeners, because they have been, we work with, last year, we worked with 450 first graders who came through our program in the Durwood demonstration garden for a SNAP Ed nutrition education lesson and tasting, and then a tour of that garden by a very large contingent of Master Gardeners. We had about 40 volunteers who helped me. So that is a very exciting program that we're hoping to expand. But I'm just very happy to be co-chair of this awesome group.
Thank you so much, Pam. And it's great to see you again in the new year. With that, with our last kind of presentation, I just have a few notes to share at the end. I want to turn it over really quickly to Emma Lehman, who will be taking up the role as our other co-chair for this year. So Emma, thank you so much, and feel free to introduce yourself, fun fact, whatever you'd like to tell people.
Sure, yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Emma. I work for Montgomery Park's community garden program. So I work with Michelle Nelson, who I'm sure a lot of you have met and worked with before. Yeah, I'm really excited to be a part of this group, and I'm excited to have my own space to garden this year. So I'll get to have my hands in the dirt a little bit and help share with the group. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Emma. And Emma will be officially, not that it means anything really, but officially joining as the co-chair after this meeting today. So we'll be, Pam, myself, and Emma will be, I'll send you both an email shortly, but we'll be having conversations as we move forward for the rest of the year and plan out other ways to try to get this group involved in things and opportunities. And I say that because that's going to be a big focus for us this year in these conversations, is finding ways to get whether it's volunteer opportunities or opportunities to be an educator or teach, whatever it may be. We want to share those opportunities as much as possible in this group this year. So I say that to say also